What would you do as a mother or a father to save the life of your child? If everything was life or death, how far would you go? And what sort of lengths would you go to disguise or hide or save and protect the life of your child? Now, in the times that we live in right now, I know there's some of us that consider whether it's worth having a child at all and starting a family in the world that we're in right now. It's confusing, it's chaotic, we can't trust some of the news. There's wars and rumours of wars, just like the Bible warned. And some of us feel like we may be living in the end time. So, things are violent out there. There's viruses out there. Is this a time to have family? I don't blame people for feeling that way. But can you imagine what it might have been like in some of the times of the Bible? Running for your lives in the midst of war. What did some of these mothers have to go through in order to not only have their children, but raise their children in some form of safety, even getting pregnant? Today we're going to discuss a lady who was living in the ultimate fear and what she did to help protect her child, and unbeknownst to her, what the future had to hold for that child, and how significant her actions were for the future of her whole race, for the future of our faith that we know it today. This hero is called Jochebed, and she is the mother of Moses. So welcome back to Bible Club, Naomi's Bible Club, and let me set the scene. So, to talk about Jochebed and who she was, what she did, and what were the repercussions of her actions, I'll tell you a little bit about why she was where she was and why she was living the way she was. Now, she and her husband, Amram, are descendants of Levi. So, Levi is a brother of Joseph, and you call them the Levites as the generations go on. So, maybe 200 or 300 years prior to Jochebed and Amram being born, there was a man called Joseph that we may have heard of the story of Joseph. Joseph, you might know as Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, because there was a show out called that. But his story led him to be extremely important and significant in Egypt a couple of hundred years before these guys were born. And because he had had a significant influence on the Pharaoh of that time, the Pharaoh of that time admired him and adored him and loved him, and providing him an invitation for him and his brothers, including Levi, to come and join them and live within the realms of Egypt. And when we say that, we're talking about 12 brothers here, and their father, and their wives, multiple wives, all of their children, all of their servants. There was hundreds of them, thousands of them when they came to live. And they joined this area and they lived in union, and they were happy, and they was prosperous, and they had good lives, and they were wealthy. But as time went on, as these years went on, these 200-300 years have gone on, things between the royalty of Egypt, the Pharaoh and his people, and the Hebrews of all of the 12 tribes of Israel had changed significantly. And by the time Amram and Jochebed were alive, things had significantly worsened. The Hebrews were now living in oppression and statistical slavery, basically. Pharaoh and his then family no longer remembered Joseph and his brothers and the relationship he had with the Pharaoh of then. All this Pharaoh knew is that the Hebrews were expanding in size to perhaps millions. And he needed to keep them oppressed so that they didn't rise up, because they were sharing the same space to live in. So he treated them badly. I mean, it's never a good idea. You know, if you're running a business, I think people know that you don't treat your staff badly, you know, even if you're forcing them, which is what's the case here. They will rise up. Anyway, they were living in oppression and difficult times, and they were probably not getting paid at all, if anything, for the work that they did. And it was a difficult time, but yet people still married and had families and did day-to-day life things like we do now. And we just do it. We just carry on. And so Amram married Jochebed, and she was actually his father's sister. So she was actually his auntie. In those times, I think this was something of the norm. So it wasn't like looked upon as something bad. But they were both very strong, faithful to the God of Israel's. Truly, they were true faithful people. And they went on to get married and have children. And they gave birth together of Aaron first, and then a little girl called Miriam. Now, during this time that they had started their family, the Pharaoh of the time was getting more and more and more paranoid about how many people were being born, and especially because of the men. So obviously men had more threat to overthrow him as the leader, because, you know, men are strong and powerful and they're the ones that go to war. So during this time, and we don't know if this is before or during, for Amram and Jochebed, I don't know her name, sorry, Jochebed, he put out a rule that every newborn baby will be put to death at birth by the midwives. Now, either Jochebed was already pregnant or about to be pregnant when this rule was happening, and so she was very fully aware that this is something that was a potential problem if she were to have a son, because that's what he wanted to kill, just the boys. So can you imagine? I just, when I was pregnant, obviously people say to you, well, you know, you must not have any stress, you must keep calm, you know, try not to get angry or upset yourself because you're going to affect the baby. But can you imagine being told that if your baby's born a boy at birth, after labour, that the ladies that are supposed to be helping you will take him away and kill him, murder him? The stress of those 9 months must have been horrendous. Now, I'm not too sure if she hid the whole pregnancy for the whole of the term, or if she got through the pregnancy just hoping and praying that she was having a daughter. She'd already had one beautiful daughter. Maybe she prayed she didn't have a son. I don't know. I know I would. I'd be like, oh Lord, please, do not put us at risk of this evil thing. And there were 2 midwives, which I'm just going to check the names because I'm not sure I'll say them correctly. The 2 midwives that were, I think, also absolute heroes in this story are Shiphrah and Puah. Shiphrah and Puah. I'm sorry if that's wrong, please put in the comments if I need to sort out my pronunciation of these lovely ladies. But these 2 midwives, who were also extremely faithful to the God of Israel, decided that they were not going to be killing any babies. Now, I don't know how many midwives there were, if they were the only 2, or if there were lots and lots of midwives in that time. So I believe that perhaps either Jochebed hid her whole pregnancy the whole time, or when it came to birth time, these 2 ladies could have been her midwives. But can you imagine when labour came after all these 9 months, well, 10 months really that you're pregnant for, as ladies know, going into labour and having the fear that your baby is going to be a boy. Can you imagine that? And then having to be able to go through labour, knowing that you're going through all of that pain and feeling that you might not get the reward of the baby afterwards. And perhaps the ladies that have been assigned to you, they may be your worst enemy at that time. So either these two heroes, another two heroes of the story, were the ones present when Moses was born, or Jochebed did it all by herself. But either way, this woman must have had the bravery of steel, the faith, unbelievable, the type of faith that moves mountains, to actually go through with this. Well, she had no choice, but to just keep going and hoping and praying. And when that baby was born, and Jochebed got to see her son, be it whether these beautiful midwives didn't do what they were ordered to do, or whether she had the baby all by herself, she had her son, who was obviously a boy, and she could see that he was good. And when we say that, I don't mean that just like I did and like you did when you had your children. Oh, wow, how beautiful is my child. Nothing's more beautiful than this. Because all mothers do. Jochebed had it was a movement. It was like a spiritual knowledge of this child being special. And there was another mother that's similar, who was also in a situation where she had a very special child. And there was also somebody in power trying to kill all the baby boys at the time, and that would be Mary with Jesus. But this time Jochebed was here, and the fear and the immediate danger was right in front of her, literally just outside her front door. She couldn't go anywhere with this baby. Nobody could know that this baby existed. Otherwise, this special baby that she could see was sent from God. His life would be over. So, she set about keeping him a secret. I don't know how many of you have tried to take care of a brand new baby, but they're not known for being quiet. They like to let you know that they exist. They like to let you know that they don't want to sleep right now. They want to be fed right now, that they're dirty right now, they've messed themselves, they need a bath. They're vocal. Or even just sounds. So I'm guessing that the whole family had to be involved. Amram, the husband, Aaron, the oldest son, and Miriam, the daughter, Jochebed herself. They managed, through sheer stealthiness, she must have just fed him the whole time to keep him quiet. They managed to keep him unknown and safe for 3 months. And for 3 months that woman nursed that child, knowing full well she wouldn't be able to keep him, because even if she got past a certain age, people would realise there was no other boys that age. They would know that he'd managed to get through the net somehow. And Pharaoh probably would not have that. So for 3 months she kept him a secret. Can you imagine that? Keeping your beautiful child a secret, not telling anybody. And having to keep your other children from keeping it secret and not going to their friends and going, oh my gosh, my mum's got a baby. You know? So when it came time when she realised that she couldn't take care of him anymore, she set about a plan. And it was a plan. It was a faithful plan. Because she couldn't see what would happen to him. She just had faith that God had a plan. So she gathered lots of reeds from the Nile. Because at this point also, Pharaoh had changed, probably because of these midwives that weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, so quite a few babies were slipping through the net too. He made an order that the soldiers would take these boys and throw them in the Nile. So maybe that's what made her quicken her decision at this point, because if someone found out, it wasn't just the midwives that were looking for these babies now and doing harm. So she went down to the Nile and she gathered reeds, and she weaved herself a basket that's just the right size for a baby to fit in, with a lid. And she made some tar, painted the inside, the bottom of it, so it was waterproof. And I love Moses baskets. I love that they are still called Moses. Some people don't even know why they call their basket a Moses basket. You go to the shop when you have a baby, you're buying all these things, and you get in the cot and the pushchair and the teddy bears and the blankets. But a lot of us also go and buy a Moses basket, and that's from this moment. Jochebed created the first Moses basket. And after, I swear, must have been a lot of prayer, a lot of tears, farewells from the family, she walked down to the river with her baby and her daughter, and she waded into the water. And don't forget, this is the Nile. There's going to be some sort of crocodiles or alligators or something in there. Oh. And she placed her baby in the basket and she kissed him for what she thought would be the last time. And she must have sent up so many prayers. Lord God, it is now in your hands. And by faith and not sight, she released her precious child onto that river and put it into God's hands. The amount of faith and hope and prayer that woman must have had, because I know I cannot imagine me letting go. I'll go down with my baby. I could not imagine letting go. It's not in our nature as mums. They're attached to us for 9 months inside our belly. They're part of us. Not only did she give out a prayer, she asked her daughter to follow the basket, to see where it went. She needed to know, of course. And off Moses went out into the sea, let free into God's hands. Released for God's plan, that Jochebed had no idea what God's plan was. She didn't know if he'd survive, let alone what his future would be if he did. And Miriam followed that basket down the river. So to me, not only were the midwives heroines of this story, so is Miriam. Because what she did next also helped seal Moses' future. Moses' basket floated down the river, and by God's will, God's wind, God's reefs, he got caught up just the right area, right where Pharaoh's daughter, the princess of Egypt, bathed in the river. And this basket comes floating up to her. And she opens the lid. And inside there's this beautiful baby. And again, she has the same feeling. This baby is wonderful. He's good. And her heart is full of compassion. Again, God has placed another woman in the right space, in the right time, to make sure that his plan comes to fruition. So while Pharaoh is killing all these babies, God knows what he's doing. God knows who he was going to give that baby to give birth to. And he knew what woman he was going to put right there to find him. And when Pharaoh's daughter found him, she was like, oh, I love him, I want to keep him. And Miriam, his sister, is hovering around. She's like, I know a nurse, if you would like me to go and fetch her if you would like to keep him. Oh, Pharaoh's daughter thinks this is a wonderful idea, because obviously she can't nurse him, she hasn't had a baby. But yes, if you know someone, please go and get her. Miriam, thanks to her, runs home and gets her mother to come and meet Pharaoh's daughter. And Pharaoh's daughter hires Jochebed to nurse her own child, obviously unbeknownst to Pharaoh's daughter. But Jochebed knows it's her son. So not only is she blessed to see her son again, so once, releasing something into God's hands that you find so precious and you may never ever see again. And then you get the opportunity to get it back, but you get it back more. because now she's being paid to look after her own son. What a blessing. She gets another few years, maybe 3 or 4 years, being the nurse to that baby, being the nurse to Moses. So though he was being raised like an Egyptian prince with all the special things that they would get, all the wealth and the privilege that comes with that, and that the very Pharaoh that ordered his death was now raising him as his own grandson. God has a sense of humour, I think. But Jochebed got to raise him for 3 or 4 years. And obviously because of her faith and her motherhood, which I feel must have been amazing, because not only did she instill something in Moses that he must have held on to as he became an adult, if you know the story of Moses, but she also raised Aaron and Miriam. And as you go on through Exodus, which is where this story mostly fits, you will find out that Aaron and Miriam are extremely important people in the building of the faith which we know now too, the law that comes in through Moses. When Moses comes back, which we all know, to set the very people free that the Pharaoh was oppressing, he comes back with his brother, and Miriam is there, and they go into the wilderness as well. So find out about their story too, because all 3 of those people came from Jochebed and Amram. So she got 3 years to instill that faith, that Hebrew, that belief that God of Israel is in him. Just like she did with Miriam and Aaron. Thank goodness God gave her enough time to do that. And the future is done. See how that can be? Just giving that faith, letting go of something you think is going to destroy your whole life. But what it actually did, the future of Moses, is incredible. He came back, he freed, through God's hand, him and Aaron, all of those Hebrews out of that land. Jochebed managed to save all of those people by the faith that she had that God would take care of something she was letting go of in sheer faith. And I'd say that there was lots of heroines in this story. We know the heroes that come along later. But in this story, right at the beginning of Moses' life, if it wasn't for his mother, his sister, Pharaoh's daughter, and possibly the 2 midwives that refused to kill babies, Moses got to fulfill God's plan. God's plan always works out. Now, obviously, I would like you to read about that and see what you feel. Most of this is in Exodus. I think it does talk about it in Numbers as well, Numbers 33, it talks about Amram getting married. But also, well, I feel like today, just before I recorded this, I had a conversation with a friend I've got in touch with, and she sent me this today, and I thought that might be the purpose of this story. 2 Corinthians 5 verse 7. For we walk by faith and not by sight. You don't know what's on the other side of releasing something you think is that important to you. And what's more important to anyone is their children. But because of Jochebed's faith, without sight, God's plan came to fruition. It's amazing. She's another hero, and I know there's more. And I hope you enjoyed just learning a little bit about those people. And I hope you go on to read about Moses' story as well. Go on. And Joseph beforehand. But just in the middle of those two was a story of a very strong woman full of faith who did something remarkable, unbelievable, because God had a plan. She didn't know the plan, but she still followed. Anyway, thank you for listening. God bless, and I hope you return to hear the next story. Take care. Bye.